Hello, it's Friday. I have two exams this evening, and I have a presentation and exam tomorrow in my Italian class. And I have to kind of like finish like a presentation, and do some research for another assignment that I have. That we kind of like I'll agree to submit the group project tomorrow, but tomorrow is going to be a little hectic, so I won't really be able to do that. So I have to finish it today, which there is enough time, hopefully. I don't know, like I already kind of like I have gotten like a lot done, but I could get more done. And yeah, but basically I kind of like I decided to cut this study session short because my head was starting to get in the way. I was having some issues with fantasies and all that. And like the title of this video is these fantasies must die. I kind of like decided, as I kind of like noticed that I was struggling, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna talk about it for some moments, just a few minutes brief talk, so I can get this stuff out of my system. But this also has to do with like the long run, because I don't want to just cut that short like right now. I also want on the long run to no longer be kind of like consumed by fantasies. I don't want to spend my day kind of like living my life in my head. I want to live my life outside. I want to interact with the world and get things done, and do things that are kind of like meaningful to me and all that. So I'm kind of a lot of times when fantasizing about things, it gets in the way of that. So I'm kind of like trying to I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do. That's kind of like the thing, because I have kind of like had this resolution that I want to shun my fantasies since like very young. Very young, honestly. I think that for as long as I can kind of like remember, I can recall it, like I've had issues with fantasies, with daydreaming. Maybe that's a better way of putting it, daydreaming. And I kind of and I've been done with this for so long, and I haven't really been able to completely counter it. So I'm kind of like at this point where I'm like, what else can I do? How else can I kind of like get in touch? Because particularly, one big fantasy that I have right now, like I have the fantasy of like this being my reality, but I don't even want the entirety of this. I just want that this will kind of like give me a way for me to achieve something else. I like it. This is how this is kind of like a roundabout way for me to kind of like get from to point Z, I guess. And it does kind of like also reflect on me, like why is that I want that so badly? Like, is that really something that has historically appealed to me? Like yes, it has historically appealed to me. I have all these different fantasies, and they change with time. And I have some that are going to exist for a day, and I have others that are going to exist for much longer. I've had this one fantasy since I was I had one fantasy that was from like ages 11 to 21. So it was like a decade of like me dreaming about that, about that daydream consuming my life. And honestly, getting in the way, I think when I was middle school, high school, it was easier for me to kind of like feel like I was getting something done, because there was school, there were my extracurricular activities, there was like the stuff that I was doing. So it kind of like allowed me to look at myself and be like, okay, yeah, I'm doing things. But once I graduated high school, like things started to fall apart, because I suddenly had all these time that I was struggling to employ. I was struggling to kind of like translate, because there was always going to be a little bit of a gap between me graduating high school and me starting college. It ended up being longer than I think anyone had anticipated, but it is what it is. And also, like, it's only now this semester that I'm like really invested in like doing things since it's been a while. But the point I'm trying to make is that I had like a lot more free time, and I wasn't always using it productively. Once again, my definition of productive isn't necessarily like the capitalistic version of that. It's just like me doing things that kind of like add to my life, like things that kind of like contribute to my well-being and all that. And I was struggling with that. I was struggling with kind of like finding ways for me to to be well, because ultimately I don't know, there is I don't know how to, I don't even know what I'm trying to do. I just know that I want these fantasies gone, but I don't really have, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do, because like I technically, like I know for a fact that like this particular fantasy that I have going on right now, like I know that I don't want that. I know that that would be there's some aspects that I want, but the gist of it, is not really the case. It's kind of like it's a means to an end, and like I kind of like have come to realize that these ends, like there would be, for example, notoriety, like being kind of like known, being kind of like recognized in whatever way I want. Like this is kind of like something that is kind of like relevant in this context, but it's still like what I it's not what I it's not really something, I don't know, it's something that I want very kind of like flimsily, like I'm not really invested. This is not what I'm doing on my daily life, isn't really directly contributing to that. I'm kind of like just going through the motions, and I don't really know what exactly yeah, like these fantasies, they get me going through the motions without much investment or interest, and I'm done with that. I want to enjoy my life. I don't want my life to just be a series of events that I'm kind of like completely detached from. This has been how I've lived my life in the past, but this is not what I want for myself right now. And there's no amount of effort, it seems, that that can get me fully free. I'm always like faltering one way or another, and I don't know what exactly I have to do to make things work. And that is kind of that's frustrating. I think maybe I just have to kind of like get this off my chest that I don't know what to do. I don't really know how to properly target my brain. I don't know how to kind of like make sure that I don't get caught up in all these fantasies, all these lies. Because fantasies, like, they don't necessarily have to be lies, but like they can involve lies. And that's kind of like what I see a lot in my life. It's like looking back, they're just like a lot of fantasies, they came with like me really reframing like my life, really recontextualizing in a ways that was not honest. I was kind of like picking and choosing what I was kind of doing, and I didn't really have I don't know. And the thing is, like, as much as I try to rewrite history, like, what happened has still happened, and there's nothing that I can do to make things right. I'm using quotations because like right. This is like according to like one specific perspective, the perspective of like these fantasies, and I'm kind of like done with that. But the thing is, like, it doesn't matter that I'm done, because I'm still kind of like being affected by it, and I don't really know, because there's just so many things that, because I feel like I think I'm a pretty open person. I think that it's fairly easy for you to talk to me and for you to get to know me as a person. But there are some things that are kind of like private, and which is interesting because like they're kind of private right now, but when I was younger they were not. So they were. I talked about them kind of like openly, and right now in my old age, I kind of like realized like, oh yeah, I don't want to talk about that. That is no longer something that represents me. It's just I don't know. I think that I'm getting more. I mean, I've always been a reserved person, but I'm getting not not. But that's the thing. Like, it is not bad that there are certain things that I don't want to talk about. There are certain things that they're personal, and I don't have to kind of like be so open about that. It's interesting because it's happening like very organically. I think that a conversation that happens with me today versus the conversation that would have happened with me 5 years ago, it would really demonstrate that. How some of these things, like, I would just be saying them as if or whatever, and like these days it wouldn't really come up, because I think that I'm kind of like over some of those, because the reason why I say them over is because some of these things, they have to do with trauma. So I had certain traumas that made me kind of like feel very made me feel very separate from certain areas of my life. And then later on, like, I kind of like became like too too close together. And I think that this was the point where I was just really oversharing some things, and that today wouldn't really happen, because I think I came across the other side, where I now have a healthy relationship. An example is sexuality. Like, because of like my trauma that I was dating back when I was 13, like, that got me to feel repulsed, and then it was hyper open about some things, and hyper fixated. And now I'm kind of like in a point where I'm neither, I'm neither repulsed, but I am also like not super fixated on that. It's just another element of my life. It's an element that doesn't even need to kind of like have that much relevance, and it's great because this means that I have healed. But there are other like things that when I think about them, because I think that not so much these days, but I think when I was younger I wanted to perceive myself. I wanted to be adventurous, an adventurous person who's trying new things, who's kind of like has a lot of experiences, and a lot of like stories to tell. And that is something that I don't care too much about anymore. Which it's good because I don't have that many stories to tell. So it's good that I'm no longer kind of like fixated on that. But it was something that for the longest time it kind of affected me, one way or another, because I whenever there was a situation which I didn't feel like I was being adventurous or anything, it felt like my brain had to create a whole reality, a whole narrative, to kind of like justify that, to kind of like try to appease, the fact that I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. And I know fantasies, they're always about that. So I had to look internally and be like, okay, so what exactly can I, right now, what can I work on? Like what exactly can I, yeah, what can I do? When I look at my life right now, like what exactly can I improve? And also improve in what way? Because there are so many things that we want and that we don't get. So how exactly do I find out like which one is kind of like getting in the way of me right now, in the way of my progress right now? Which kind of like how do I like, and how do I and also like that's going to be kind of hard because I feel like this particular fantasy that I've had lately, that I'm kind of like, okay, this is not really something that I would want in practice. I'm just picking some aspects, some context in which it would be helpful, or it would be interesting for me to kind of be like that. But like I don't want the entirety of the thing, and that is not enough. You think that if I kind of like affirmed in my head whenever the fantasy came, I can kind of like pointed out all the things that I didn't want, all the things that would like my life would end up getting worse because of that. And I mean, it's very throwaway fantasy. It doesn't really have like a deeper meaning, and it's not really kind of like rude. But that's the thing. It might not have a deeper meaning, which it does have meaning. I'm just straight up saying like I'm fantasizing about this, because like there's something there. But also like the more time passes, the more roots grow. So suddenly like these kind of like throwaway fantasy, it has a lot of like different almost spin-offs, have other things happening, and I don't really know how to counter everything. Well, most particularly because some of like these ideas, they're kind of entertaining, and you should not underestimate the power of entertainment, because like if you are kind of like struggling or halfway there, whatever there is, you're just kind of like working through something, it's always going to be an interesting situation for you to get detangled from that, because it's the same reason why we watch movies and TV shows, and we read and we play and we kind of like do all the things that we do that are entertainment to us. Like it's kind of like engrossing in a way. So as I said, like these fantasies, they create roots, and then it gets even harder to detangle yourself from them. So it's kind of like one of those things that you might think like, oh, I'm just going to let my brain run free, run wild for like a couple of minutes. But like those minutes, like a new root is coming from it. It's kind of like the roots are getting deeper, so you have to be careful. I'm definitely like not, I mean, I'm saying this, trying to say like don't do this, but I definitely do this. So do as I say, not as I do, I guess. But yeah, but that is something that, look at my nail, look how long it is. It looks so cute. And I also have this one. The other ones are all short, but yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying. Like you kind of have to be careful, because it can grow roots deeper and deeper, depending on like how much time you direct it that way. So even like a little moment can make it harder for you to detangle, and that is something that I have to keep in mind. but also sometimes like I really struggle because sometimes like something happens and I have to create a scenario in my head to kind of like to suit me, to suit myself. And basically, like a lot of times like it coincides with the fantasies I was having. So I'm living in that kind of like, it's not even an utopia, to be completely honest. Like there's still like flaws, which I think is good. Like that is a sign that I am like things are changing one way or another. But it's not even perfection. And that's the thing, because also sometimes like you start romanticizing things. You start romanticizing like the situations, even the bad ones that you should not be romanticizing. And you're kind of like stuck in that reality, that is in your head only. And I don't really know what can be done to do better. Like I try to kind of like give myself a reality check, in the sense of, okay, so this thing that I want, look at all, like the side effects, all the consequences, like how it would change my life, your life. Here's an example. I'm not a person who, is interested in relationships and in being in a relationship or anything like that. So, it would not make sense for me to kind of like fantasize about that, right? Because there's just like so many things there that it's kind of like like that my lifestyle would have to change considerably. But I've come to realize that I like my lifestyle, I like the way that things are set in my life. I've tried other things, and I've just realized that like the way things are set up for me is kind of maybe not ideal, but like it is close to that. But still, like you kind of like start thinking about that. So a lot of my fantasies, they're kind of like that. Like they're things that don't make any sense for who I am. For example, also kind of like, because I was talking about notoriety and how like you want, you want some type of recognition for your efforts, for your endeavors and all that. But at the same time, like that would involve like you being put in the spotlight of sorts. So, and like I don't really want that. It's kind of like I talked about this before. Like I don't want like social media. I don't want to be there. So thinking about that, it involves a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I don't like that. But still, I can kind of like fantasize about that, because like it is something that it seems to be appealing, at least at first. But that's the thing, like I know all the drawbacks, all the negative aspects of the situation, and still I kind of like, a part of me still kind of like thinking about that. So I don't really I don't have a solution for this. But it is pretty, yeah, some of like these fantasies, they are they might, I mean, some, because I was talking about relationships, and I was like, okay, I don't wanna that, but I'm trying to think of something that I can talk about without actually saying the thing that I'm fantasizing about, where I don't, at first it seems nice, but then the more time passes, the more you look into it, the more like the less appealing it becomes. But still, like there is that, you're still kind of like fantasizing one way or another. But yeah, so basically, trying to say, I guess like being famous could be one. Like like I think not being famous, but like being rich. Obviously, we need money to survive. We need money to exist. So like we all, this is not a particularly crazy fantasy for anybody to have, And I don't even like need to be kind of like the richest person in life. Just I don't know, if I could double the amount of money I make every month, like that would change things for me. And that is just like the nature of these things. But like it seems to be, I don't know, like this is not really a good metaphor, because like whatever drawbacks there are having more money, like I still would rather have them than kind of like be in this aspect, like in this particular situation. But yeah, I can't think of anything, and I'm just kind of like embarrassed to admit the thing I was kind of fantasizing about. But it is something that like it does kind of like have some appeal at first. Like there's nothing about my disposition or my demeanor or anything about me that is kind of like anti that. So basically like it could be something that could work out. But then like the more time passes, the more I'm like, okay, but like then there's this aspect. But in my fantasies, like those, they, even though I'm bringing them up, like they don't compute. Like I'm still kind of stuck. Yeah, I'm stuck in between like these realities, because what I'm fantasizing is not the full picture, and kind of like trying to present the full picture to myself is also not something that is kind of like certain having the effect that I wanted, of like this stimulating me from wanting to engage in anything. But yeah, so that's the thing. These fantasies, they must die. I am sick and tired of being. I think that my last video was like we are slaves to ourselves, to our thoughts, and this is kind of like a continuation of that. Like I am so done being ridden around by these fantasies. I really want to kind of like focus for once on like the things that are important to me and the things that will add to my life later on. So schoolwork, my writing, stuff like that. So anyways, bye.